So I would like to thank you again for joining us today. Coming to today's agenda, here's how today's session will flow. We will begin by understanding why customer service play such an important role in accreditation and how it extend beyond policies and procedures. Uh, we will then clarify who the customer is in form of accreditation perspective. Customer is a very generalized term, and I will get into the detail where when we are talking about customer, who falls under this category. From there, we will explore key service behaviors, the role of leaderships, the common gaps that is observed during the accreditation audits, and the best practices that can help our service culture become better. And as we move through this session, I would encourage you to reflect on your own organization. Think about what is already working for the organization and what are the small changes that you can make that would have meaningful differences. When we talk about all the things in this session today, you just keep your organization in your mind. It will help you to understand uh, what I'm saying, and if there's a space of improvement, you can always apply all of those things. So now coming to why customer service matters uh, in accreditation. So it is it is important to understand that accredit evaluates system in action and not just on policies and papers. You need to see the action to evaluate how the customer service is. You can write it on paper, but it's not just enough. So an organization can have a very well written SOPs and a very detailed documentation, but if the staff behavior does not reflect those policies in real situation, auditors will immediately identify that as a gap. So customer behavior are often the most visible evidence of how well the systems are actually working. So they reflect organizations culture, the ethical practices that they are doing, the staff competence, and the genuine commitment towards the quality. These are really important. So during audits, the assessor do not just rely on the documents that you're submitting or that you're showing. They observe the interactions, they listen to how staff communicate, and they assess how these issues are handled in real time. For example, a respectful and a transparent interaction between uh, everyone who is present builds trust and confidence. On the other hand, if there's a dismissive or defensive response, a serious concern is raised, and even if everything procedure or the SOPs is technically exist, you can see these gaps. Consider a situation where complaint handling process is documented, but when you ask the staff, they are unable to explain it or to even tell what they are supposed to do or what their role is there. So this indicates a gap that these things are present on paper, but the staff do not know how to do it. Or when escalation pathways are defined, like every customer service would have some sort of escalation that's need to be made, but uh, no one takes the ownership when the problem arises. That's again a very huge gap. So if there's an escalation pathway, the staff needs to know who to escalate the problem, because customer services is very important, and they break or make your services, and it will in long term affect your revenue cycle. So customer service is not and it's not an optional in accreditation. It's the core compliance requirement that demonstrate whether the system, the policies, and the leaderships that there are truly effective are and whether they are in practice or not. So, as I earlier told you, that we will be discussing who the customer is in accreditation. So, customer, when you look from outside, is a very broad term. So, when we hear the word customer, we usually think of the external group, the patients in case of healthcare, students or trainees in context of the training and education provider. However, in the context of accreditation, The definition of customer is much broader. Uh, customer customer includes the patients, definitely, the students, the trainees who we are providing the service as an organization, as well as the families, the caregivers who are directly affected by the quality of the service provided. Let's say for an example, healthcare. Let's take healthcare for an example. Okay, your customer would be the patient. Okay, if you're in healthcare organization, your customer would be the patient, but the relatives and the caregivers are your indirect customers. So if the services are not provided the right way, everybody gets affected. Similarly, in uh, the training and education providers, your first customers is your students and the trainees who are taking the course. But they do publicity with word of mouth, and a lot of things get affected through there. Okay. So at the same time, the accreditation also recognize the internal customers. All that we spoke about are the external customers, the one we are giving our product or our services to. But also there's an important internal customers that includes the staff members of the organization, the faculty, the team who rely on the systems, communication, and their support is important to perform the role effectively. So the regulatory and accrediting bodies are also a key stakeholders. Okay, their confidence in the organization is influenced. It's influenced by how clearly the information is shared, um, how professionally the staff, the internal customers, responds, and how are things being followed. Um, so one important point to remember is that the internal service quality directly impacts the external service delivery. If the internal quality is not great, it will eventually show up in your external delivery. So when the communication is poor or the staff feels unsupported internally, it it will become visible in the external interaction with your patients, let's say with your students, with the trainees. And auditors are very sensitive to this. They often identify the internal service issues through staff's interview. They observe, they have these informal interaction, and all of these are sometimes done without the organizations even realizing it. So these are the points that's how auditors pick it up, that whether what's on paper is actually being practiced or not. So this is why a strong customer service in accreditation starts internally and then it extends outward. Moving on to accreditation areas linked to customer service. So, several accreditation requirements are directly linked to the customer service or behavior. Even if the word customer service are not always stated explicitly in the standards that we have. Okay, so the key areas include communication and transparency, which ensures the stakeholders receive a clear, accurate information. This helps them to make very informed decisions when they are taking any decisions regarding the organization or how to go ahead with it. Respect, dignity, and ethical conduct are equally critical. Okay, as you know, as they protect the right of the patients, the students, or any other stakeholders, depending upon what organization you come from. Next is complaint and feedback management. Okay, this is another major area. These processes demonstrate how responsive and accountable an organization is when concerns are raised. Uh, we think we are doing everything the right way, following the SOPs, but unless and until there's no feedback, there's no complaint, there is no information from the other end, we won't know how well we are doing. Okay, so this is a very core area, and I will talk about it in a little detail as we move ahead. So next is continuous quality improvement. So continuous quality improvement ties all of the above, all of these together. You know, it shows whether feedback is simply collected or genuinely used to strengthen the system and performance. As I told you, that the feedback we get help us identify where we are lacking, how well we are doing, and if, you know, we are humans, the organization is run by a human, there's bound to be slight human errors, and this is where we we collect the information and understand how to improve the services that we provide. So during audits, you would often see, assessor ask these questions randomly, that what happens when something goes wrong, how do you deal with it, or how do you handle the dissatisfaction that comes along, and how are the improvement made once you get a complaint or once you have a feedback that you need to work on. So auditors are not interested in the answers themselves, like they don't want a perfect answer. They are just here to observe how confidently, clearly, and openly those answers are delivered. So because if those feedbacks, those things are in practice, they would know what they are answering, they would know how to answer it, and they would have everything on tip of their tongue, because it's not just on paper, it's in their practice. Now we will discuss few behaviors that does impact the service that we give, the customer service that we give, and I'll briefly explain each of these. So the when we talk about customer service behavior in accreditations, the effective communication, the professionalism, and accountability sits right at the top. Okay, I will explain all of these now. So professionalism is not just limited to a job title or the seniority, how senior they are, they're gonna behave in that way. No, it reflects how staff communicates, how well they conduct themselves, how they present professionally, and how they interact with the people from different backgrounds. When I speak about different backgrounds, it's internal and the external customers, both the customers. We are using right now the term customers for internal and external both. So, effective communication is a key part of professionalism. Okay, this means providing clear, timely, and accurate information. It helps to resolve a lot of problems, and actively listening to the concerns, and these concerns again come from both the internal and external customers. Taking accountability, on the other hand, it's about ownership. uh, it is it is the willingness to take the responsibility rather than just shifting the blame when something doesn't go as planned. Even though you have SOPs, you have everything set in the particular way, it's not possible for everything to go just as you planned on. Okay, there's going to be errors, there's going to be feedback, and to take accountability of what went wrong, it's very important. We can't just push it. That's something we as an organization, or everybody needs to know, that taking accountability for the problems that has happened is important. So in practice, accountability means acknowledging the issues when they arise, following through the commitment that we have done in the first place, escalating the concern problem appropriately. That's very important. If we do not escalate, the issues cannot be resolved and it will be just left unresolved. So when auditors frequently, assess these behaviors doing staff interview and real time observation, they they pay attention to the staff, how they explain their roles, and whether they know their escalation pathway and they have understood this or not. And these are something that's need to be done in day-to-day situations. So strong professionalism builds trust, and strong accountability reduces risk. So together, these behavior demonstrate that systems are not just documented but actively functioning in the practice. This is very important for everyone to understand in an organization. There are more behaviors apart from this. So uh, Inconsistency service delivery is one of the most common observation that's seen during audits. So it is noticed that different staff give different answers. Okay, and or when practices across in the practices varies across different departments. So these inconsistency can undermine the confidence in the organization systems, because organization is a one whole part. And if it varies across department, then again, as I told you, that the paper and practice, you can see those differences right there. So consistency, you have to be consistent, and it is achieved only when when the staff or the internal customer follows the SOP and the standardized process that is being set. These SOPs and the standardized processes takes lot of research to come into place, and these are the best ways of following or giving a service that's there. So the staff needs to know that they have to follow them. Okay, this not only helps them to follow and make everything the right way, it helps them to ensure that, okay, there's reliability, the customers knows what to expect. When a customer sees an organization is accredited, the first thing I think that comes to the mind, that, oh, good customer service, because they know what to do, they have everything in place, and they will be doing it the right way. So that's there. And continuous improvement, that 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 is entirely built on consistency. If there's no consistency, there's not going to be continuous improvement. It involves learning from the complaints, the incidents, the feedbacks. All of these are very important. When I said SOPs are important, updating SOPs with time as per the need is also very important. Apart from that, retraining the staff and making the adjustment as and when required to strengthening the processes that you have in as an organization. So all of these things are interlinked, all these behaviors, and they are dependent on each other. So organization that can show documented improvements over time, they demonstrate a very strong alignment with the accreditation principle. These improvements are not just there. Okay, if they can also document it, it means they are doing it. Okay, so they have proof of all the work that they have done. So it's important to remember that auditors are not expecting perfection. They are not here to look, oh, if everything's perfect. What they value is, what they value most is the culture of learning. Okay, everyone's new, everyone's trying to understand how the organization is working. And these internal customers are very important, because they set how our external customers are going to react. So if an organization identify these gaps, okay, the gaps that they might have, and they act on it, so this grows into a very strong result. This have a very, they shows that they are, they are adhering to the accreditation principle. Okay, and this is exactly what the auditor wants to see. They're not looking for the perfect answers. They are just looking that there is continuous improvement and everybody is doing it willingly. Okay, so all of these practices, all the behavior that we discuss, truly depends upon the leadership role in the service industry. Okay, I think leadership plays a very crucial role in shaping a strong service culture. Okay, the way leaders behave, they set the tone for the entire organization, and staff often mirrors what they see. Okay, that's very important to keep in mind. Leaders must model respectful behavior, empower their teams, monitor the services that's being performed, and proactively address any gaps. Okay, if leader listens and shows openness, the staff do the same. Okay, on the other hand, if leader is defensive and dismissive, staff tend to follow that pattern. So it's all in leader's hand. uh, this could be the these good things could be achieved by by leaders could arrange bi-weekly meetings, or meet their staff in daily meetings if that's a healthcare organization. I'll give an example how leaders can lead and be involved with their team members is, for example, in the case of healthcare. So healthcare do have customers on daily basis. They can do daily evening meetings or end of the day meetings where they discuss what are the problems the staff is facing. And these problems are not just the problems that the customers are that comes from the customers feedback, but this is also to understand where your internal customer, your employees, are getting stuck to resolve it. And if the leader can solve it and is open about it, it makes them, I think, the best, and the staff can always come up to them. And again, it's a whole loop. If everything falls into place, your services are getting better, your issues are getting resolved on the service and the customer service, and you definitely get your revenue because the people would want to take service from you. So all of these things can be done. So when auditors focus on leadership, they ask whether the service quality is actively discussed, or these are just treated as secondary. Okay, leaders who can clearly explain and tell how they monitor the performance, then the auditors, they know that they are doing the right job, and they know how to support their organization. Coming to common gaps that's seen during audits or in general when it comes to customer service. So during accreditation audit, some common gaps often come up. These includes unclear or poor communication, um, these uh, and people become defensive. They give defensive response to feedback. There's inconsistent service delivery, and obviously lack of proper documentation. But the important thing to note here is these gaps are usually behavior behavioral rather than technical. These all gaps are rarely intentional. They often come from lack of awareness or training. If a person's know, if the employees know what they want to do or what they were supposed to do, if SOPs are aligned, if everything is aligned, they will follow it. Okay, so here the good news is even these are behavioral gaps. These are easy to address. Okay, and this can be fixed. Okay, once the organization recognize, okay, what are the gaps, they can take corrective actions. They can do coaching. They can with simple process improvement coachings, they can have a very very significant positive impact to all these gaps, because these are just human errors or somebody who doesn't know what to do, but with training you can obviously improve these. So, coming to best practices to strengthening customer service. Now, let's talk about the best practices that's there for strengthening the customer service. And the good news is they don't have to be complicated. It's not complicated. Okay. So it is started with a regular customer service training. When your team knows what's expected and practices it on their daily basis, on their daily route, they feel confident and capable. So it helps them motivate. It helps to motivate them. Okay. Next would be having a clear and accessible SOPs. I would keep on telling, please, SOPs are important. It has to be clear and accessible to all the staff that's there. And it's very important to ensure that everyone follows the same process. Even if you have two separate people doing the same job, they need to follow the same process so that your service doesn't have differences when two different people are working on the same thing. Okay, so there's no confusion and there's no guesswork what the other person is doing, or they don't have to go and call them, oh, what's happening, what I'm supposed to do here. They have SOP, they have the Bible right in front of them, they can do it. Okay, and if someone from the team is new, they can always get back to the SOPs, and it makes the training easier, and they can just read it and do what is required, and they will know what is expected out of them. And tracking feedback is another key practice. Okay, by reviewing customers comments, their complaints, uh, you get to know, you can spot the trend, or you can spot what are the problems that your customers are facing, or these are the repetitive complaints, and these can be addressed very quickly. So this shows that your team, that feedback matters, and yes, feedback, they really do matter. And finally, simple performance monitoring. This is just to keep an eye on how services are delivered, and addressing the gap if there's still there any. This makes a very huge difference. Keeping an eye is very important to see if everything is falling into place. Okay, do you know there's a secret ingredient? Okay, consistency and leadership support. Doing these simple practices regularly, uh, and having your leaders to help you, this this builds a very strong service culture over time. This not only improves your day-to-day service, but also puts your organization in a strong position to manage the everyday problems and the feedbacks that you get. And finally, coming to the final tips and takeaways. So we will wrap up. But if there's just one thing from today that I would like you to remember, that accreditation is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice that's need to be followed. It's not something that you have to do it once. So every interaction, every interaction every customer service behavior that reflects true quality culture of your organization. Policies and documents are important. Yes, they are definitely important, but it's the people who make the accreditation and services successful. So they are your core. When service excellence, when it becomes habitual, it becomes habit, then all the other things fall into place. The consistency, the responsiveness, everything will fall into the right place, and success will naturally follow. So these are the things that's what we are going to see. Apart from that, I have formulated few frequently asked questions. Okay, these questions is something that we generally get. I will start with the first one. So the first that we always get is, do you need a separate customer service policy for accreditation? Um, I won't say you need a separate one, separate customer policy, but what really matters is that the customer service is clearly addressed somewhere in your documented system. Okay, auditors are not looking for extra paperwork. They just want to see the clear intent, the consistent practice, and the implementation. So customer service can be, included in things like the codes of conduct, the SOPs that you have for front desk, student service, patient care, or the complaint and grievance procedures. Okay, what auditor really cares about is whether your staff the understands the expected behavior, and whether these behaviors are documented, and whether these are actually followed in daily practices. That's how they, as I told you initially, that's how they look into, they ask you questions to understand that are these just documents or you are actually following it. The next question that we have is generally asked is, how can small institutions demonstrate strong customer service with limited staff? Okay, this is especially relevant for smaller hospital, educational institute, or educational institute and training providers. Many people think a smaller organization might struggle to impress the auditor, but that's not true. Okay, accreditation does not expect small institute to operate like the large ones. What they look is for clarity, consistency, and accountability. Okay, even small teams can shine brighter by clearly defining who handles customer interaction, having simple and easy to follow SOPs, ensuring that their staff is cross trained as they are a small organization. Okay, maintaining the basics but complete documentation. I would say, in fact, small organization often have an advantage. The communication is faster, the roles are clear, and the leadership is directly involved. Next would be, is verbal feedback enough, or everything must be documented? Uh, Verbal feedback is great. Okay, just the staff knows, everyone knows that yes, we are getting a good feedback, bad feedback. However, feedback is feedback. Okay, it shows that staff. it shows staff that engagement and interaction, but for accreditation purpose, documentation is essential. Okay, if you think of it, it's like if it is not documented, maybe it did not happen. Okay, they want to see, the auditors want to see when the feedback was received, when it was reviewed, because these, if the feedback is received on 1st of January, let's say, but you are replying it to after a month, that's a huge gap. You can't, that's not something that can be done, because if it is reviewed after a month, the follow up, solving it, and then coming to a conclusion where you make your customer happy, the external customer, it's a long process. So that's what they want to see, that when it was received, when it was reviewed, and when it was acted upon and follow up. But this does not mean that you need to have piles of paperwork. Documentation can be simple. It could be saved in the, so as everybody is from a different organization, healthcare, accreditation bodies, or anything, so everyone would have a different standard, and they need to maintain it as what's required out of them. Next would be how can organizations show continuous improvement in service quality? Okay, so continuous improvement is one of the strongest sign that your organization is very serious about quality. Okay, as I told you earlier, auditors are not looking for perfection. They are looking for a progress over time. Everybody knows nothing can be built overnight. It takes time. It takes efforts. So you can show this by reviewing your customer feedback trends, identifying the recurrent issues that you have, okay, and implementing corrective actions and preventive actions, the CAPAs. Okay, you can train staff based on the gaps. If you find a recurrent, for example, if there's, you receive a complaint that's about communication, you might conduct a short training for this, for the staff, and over time with the training you will see the similar complaint decrease. So that's how you have to keep on putting some other thing for a continuous improvement. And the last would be, what is the biggest customer service mistake seen during audit? Okay, I would say that the biggest mistake is defensiveness. Many organization instinctively try to justify a problem by denying the feedback or blaming it on the customer or the staff. But this is not right. This is exactly what raises red flags. You're not supposed to be defensive. You need to accept it, act on it, correct it as much as you can. So accreditation bodies value honesty, openness, and willingness to improve. Okay, these are very important, and when you acknowledge gaps and show corrective actions that have been taken, and it's all documented, and even though the answers might not be perfect, but you are trying, you're improving. Okay, and the auditors, what they see is, they see maturity and liability in the organization. They perceive organization in that lens. So it's not audits, or it's not about finding faults. They are about finding strength in your system, and all of these strength that comes internally will reflect out, and this will affect all your customers. So I think that's for today's session. And if there's any question, you can always put that in the chat box. We have Dima with us. She's helping us manage everything. I would like to thank her for doing that. You can reach out to us through telephone numbers that you can see on the screen. There's our email and website. We do a lot of articles. We write a lot of articles, and you can always visit our website and read them and see what do you like. And we'll always open for any and all feedbacks.
Thank you so much and see you soon. Goodbye.